you, I think. How are you?
Welcome all. I hope you're all feeling very strategically inclined today. My name is Phil Hartman, and I'm a member of the committee to review goal number 1. I am subbing in for Diane Snow, who is not with us today, and I'm going to try and support Dr. Munson here as he and I facilitate this. So let me quickly tell you what the plan of action is. I'm first at the charge of the provost to give you a 2-hour PowerPoint presentation, which we've streamlined a wee bit. Leo will follow up with another very short PowerPoint presentation just to set the stage on strategic planning and give you some context, most of which I think you already know. And then we get into the important part of this, which is question and answers. So really the point of these open fora, if you will, is to try and engage in a dialogue so that we can go ahead and communicate back to the committees who are involved directly in the strategic planning. So again, I'll be very brief and we can get into the meat of it. So just to give you a sense in an overall context, we are engaged in strategic planning this academic year, but this follows on the heels of a variety of other strategic initiatives, strategic planning. If we back it up even before this slide, some of you recall when Mick Ferrari was chancellor, he initiated a process that occurred over a number of years in which we engaged in a commission on the future of TCU. In a sense, then, that was the morphogenesis, if you will, for VIA, which was launched in 2003 and was very successful, and it continued on in its second iteration, Phase 2, Vision in Action, which was launched 2012, and now we are, if you will, in the third iteration, Vision in Action, Lead On. So again, there's the overall context, if you will. Just to give you a sense of the number of accomplishments, they are manifold, that have occurred in the time period of VIA, the Academy of Tomorrow. You can see, for example, the number of applications have increased precipitously. Our capital campaign was very successful, and there are others which I'll allow you to read and not mention. So the current planning then, the strategic planning that is going on this year, has 4 goals as directed by our Board of Trustees. This is goal number 1. This is the purpose of today's open forum, so I'm going to skip over this slide because Leo will discuss goal number 1 in a little bit more detail. Goal number 2, just to remind you, is to strengthen the endowment, which in a way facilitates very directly goal number 1, in particular to try and increase funding for academic programs, student scholarships, and increase the number of endowed faculty positions. Goal number 3 is to strengthen the TCU experience and the campus culture, and it includes the sub-directives, if you will, of enhancing the front door experience of TCU, a focus on inclusion in a very directed sort of way, focus on engagement of both students, faculty, staff, parents, alumni, community, and all other TCU-related constituencies, and then a focus on the brand of TCU. Finally, goal 4 is to strengthen the workforce, and that includes a number of subpoints which again are articulated on this slide. So to that end, a number of committees have been set up, 4 in total, that are charged with identifying, addressing these, and following through, if you will, with a report to be submitted ultimately to the Board of Trustees. If you're interested in more information, there is a website that's available, strategicplan.tcu.edu, which is chock full of information. And also, as I mentioned, this is iteration number 1, if you will, of these open fora. So just to remind you, on October 10th, Goal 2 will be discussed in detail. October 18th, Goal 3. October 30th, Goal 4. And the times and the locations are right there. And sadly, Provost, I think there's no lunch involved with those. Is that right? So from nothing else other than a culinary perspective, this is the best of the lot. Okay, I turn it over to my esteemed partner in crime.
Is everybody ready for some strategic planning again? You know, the university has a very, very proud tradition in the last 20, 25 years of creating a plan based upon the desires of and the wills of the people, and in fact have stayed with that plan. But during periods of time, as Phil showed, there's time to review that, bring it up to date, and look forward to our future. And that's what this is. This is all about our future, and it's all about us. What I need is the clicker, though. Thanks. Now you will see that we have already changed our name from Goal 1 to Team Excellence. And so you're here to talk to us about how to become excellent, especially in the area of academic profile. Going back over what Phil said, Diane and I are co-chairs. Diane is out of town today. Phil is actually the lead for the forum, along with me. And Janet Bryant, who's in the front row, is the person who makes it all happen. She keeps Diane and myself on track, in line, and makes sure we do the things we're supposed to do. In addition to that part of the team, we have 3 cabinet liaisons to us, and these are the 3 individuals who we are responsible to toward the cabinet and then the board. Research support team made up of those individuals throughout the university who have access to all kinds of data. One of the first things that we have asked our committee chairs to do is to determine what kind of data needs they think they have, because we feel this group will be hammered by the time we start getting toward the end. I'm sorry, okay. No. These are the 6 charges that were given to us by the Board of Trustees through the cabinet. We are staying with the language of these charges, but in fact have enlarged them. The enlarging is essentially in 2 ways. There were 6 here, 8 here, but what we have done is we've separated undergraduate and graduate as separate charges. And in addition to that, there was a desire on the part of the committee to actually study and define, redefine, rethink the TCU's teacher-scholar model. That's a term we've used for years and years and years and years, but I think through the years people have forgotten what it may have meant, let alone what it means today. Now what we have done at this point is broken those 8 subtopics into this grouping of people. Within the lead-on concept, there's somewhere between 250 and 300 of all of us involved in this. We have a little over 60 involved just in the Goal 1 part. As we go through today, well, one, I would ask anybody who is part of the Goal 1 committee, the Team Excellence Committee, please stand up and show who you are so people know who's involved. All right. Okay. In addition, there's a convener of each one of these, and I'm going to give you the names of the conveners as we begin the process. Judy Burness is the convener for School of Medicine, Matt Chumchaw for Strengths, Liz Rainwater for undergraduate, Drew Riddell for graduate, Mike Edwards for Size and Diversity, Rhonda Hatcher, Rhonda Hatcher for Power 5 conferences, Daniel Terry for recruitment, and Mags Ritby for Teacher Scholar Model. So if you have any questions specifically of any of these topical areas, they would be the one to address them to directly. So our point today, though, is not to spend a whole lot of time talking to you. We want to hear from you within the confines of the Team Excellent responsibilities, which are really these 8 areas. So what we would ask you to do is, if you have any observations, any suggestions, any questions, please come up here and address them from this microphone, and we would ask that both sides of the aisle be used, and that certainly you can line yourself up. And I don't see a whole lot of people running down here to start, which is shocking to me. But no, the goal really is to hear from you as we literally begin our deliberations. I am aware of only 2 of these committees meeting at this point to set the ground rules of their work. So please feel very, very free to come down and talk to us about what you think we should be doing or any questions you may have in process. Come on.
I would add to that, and that is that there's a framework that Leo's articulated here that we're sticking with, in part because it was mandated or at least strongly encouraged by the Board of Trustees. But as much as anything else, we're interested in knowing what's not on this list. What are some points of academic excellence that perhaps don't fall readily into these categories that you think need to be addressed at TCU in a strategic sort of way? And a housekeeping function here is we have the microphones not only so we can hear you, but this is live streamed on YouTube with the opportunity for you to, I'm sure you're going to want to play this back a lot of different times tonight and show it to your family and so on and so forth. So we need you to speak in the microphones so that we can hear you. So again, Leo and I are standing outside of the path of the microphones because we don't want to be knocked down by the flood of people.
Dr. Lahusky is either coming down to say something or get another sandwich. I would ask you to state your name.
Nadia Lahusky, I chair the religion department, and I bring a question that at least half a dozen people have asked me. Well, I don't know. Just somebody explain item number 6, belonging in this category.
We've asked the same question, actually, and I'm not sure I have a really good answer. I don't have a good answer.
Well, actually, so I'm on that subcommittee, so I'll try and take a stab at it, and I'm going to draw on the knowledge of Whitney here. Thank you very much, who's also on the committee. So I think there's a number of components to this. First of all, it's the recognition that being in a Power 5 conference has been good for TCU in terms of increasing visibility of our institution, cognizant of the fact that there may be a realignment of conferences not too far down the road, maybe 1922-23. The question is, how can we maintain that excellence in terms of athletics that has given us so many good spin-offs at our institution? I think that's part of it. The other part of it, I would say, is how can we attract student athletes to our institution who both are successful on their field of play but are also successful as students? How can we bridge that increasing gulf that seems to be occurring between the student athlete and the rest of TCU's student body? So to me, those are the primary charges. But I would also have to say, when we had our first committee meeting, that probably was a primary question that was raised. Stathis?
My name is Stathis Michailidis from engineering, and I have 2 comments, actually. The first one is that I do not understand item number 1. The School of Medicine is in an embryonic stage. We haven't seen the School of Medicine, and we want to make it a focus area for the entire university. I do not see the rationale of that. Second thing about it is that, as far as I remember from 2-3 years ago, when I was in a lot of the committees of the medical school is expected to have about 50 full-time faculty members, and its budget is not enough to sustain activities of the entire university. So unless something has changed in the budget, unless we're going to create the new Southwestern Research Institute, I'm not sure the first goal, the first area there is a very wise area. And this, with all due respect to Dr. Flynn, who does an excellent job starting this embryo. The second thing that the second comment I have is that One of the things that I have been impressed about TCU, both in a positive and in a negative way, is that it doesn't have a research culture. And as you probably have seen, for about 37 years, I tried to improve my reputation, and my profile has suffered. So what we have to do here is, if we want to improve our profile and our reputation, we have to give emphasis to the creative activities that we do. We have to give emphasis to research. Who does the research? Where is the research published? What is the reputation outside of the university? The profile is what we show to the outside of the university, not what we think our profile should be. So I think that part of what you do in the committee should be the creation of a research culture and the expectations of that research culture. Thank you. Oh, I'm Stathis Michailidis. I think I gave it in the beginning. I'm the one with the long name in the list of engineers.
So Leo, let me take a stab at the first concern, and then maybe you can cover the second. With respect to the medical school, my thought on this is that we're strategically planning for the future. And as you know, the medical school does not, pending LSME accreditation, will not open its doors until 2019. So if this was a strategic plan to carry us to the end of this decade, I would agree with you, Stathis. But this is a strategic plan that I think is going to unfold over decades. And in that sense, the medical school will be a very, very pivotal aspect of TCU. And I think actually, as a lead-in, one of the indirect effects of the medical school will be, I think, to increase the research profile and prominence and opportunities associated with TCU. So I'm taking the medical school in sort of a long-term perspective.
Hi, my name is Mark Kamimura Jimenez, and I'm on day 13 at TCU. So this is coming from a very outsider perspective in that sense, but I came here from the University of Michigan as assistant dean at the graduate school there, and actually ran data on how many TCU graduates we had at Michigan. We had two, one master's, one PhD student. And so one of the things that I have seen over and over in terms of increasing competitiveness is research. So if our students are not engaged in research, there is no path forward for them in graduate education in terms of the research disciplines. So that, to me, becomes really important in terms of looking at what 3 and 4 actually mean here, and how we support faculty to support those endeavors. In my experience, I really feel like research is what matters when you're trying to produce an undergraduate education, so that once they go out and try to be competitive elsewhere, that they know that when they come to TCU, they are competitive. That when our faculty recognize students who have a TCU education, that they have certain skill sets that they're going to go off and be able to use in their labs.
That's the one that accepts comments from people. Okay. I thought so, but when Phil introduced
Leo abandoned me. I was going to have him respond to that since it was research.
Well, no,
I agree, and I'd also make the point. That you are perhaps one of the most valuable people in this audience, because I've been here since 1981, and I'm therefore encrusted in TCU. We need the old perspective, but we also very much need the new perspective. So just to make a general statement.
Oh, can I just say, we just moved slides, but on behalf of my group that just met yesterday, the 3 of us just happened to be sitting here, some of us, that topic came up in our discussions yesterday. So I would say we'd be happy, because that topic is it's on our radar screen. If people have ideas that range both from that culture piece, but also the structural piece, the process piece, all of those pieces to make it a success, please, can I say, please share them with us. We'd be on behalf of the group on number 3.
And I would further echo that I think quite some number of us are concerned and see it as an opportunity that TCU's research profile can grow at both the undergraduate, faculty, and graduate level. So that's part of what I hope falls out of this.
say before we go to you, Jesus, the strategicplan.tcu.edu, that location also accepts exactly those kinds of statements based upon the goal. So this has been recorded, but if anybody else has anything to say about that important issue of research or anything else, that's the location. That's the location to put it in where it'll get to us in a very direct way.
Hi, my name is Jesus Castro Balbi, and when I look at the list of subcommittees, it gives me an idea as to the areas of interest for the committee, so I don't want to presume that there won't be others, but I do have to notice that research and creative activities is absent from your distribution of subcommittees. I'm sure it will come in some form in the number 3 and number 4, but truly the people that lead research on campus is faculty. And I think when we talk about academic profile, it's there. When we talk about academic reputation, that's really, I would like to quote Bonnie Melhart when she wrote in her report, her response to the trustees, that great research defines great universities, right? So that's really what's going to lift us in terms of academic profile and reputation. So I know we are all thinking about it, but I think it is time for us to articulate research and creative activities into everything we do at TCU.
I would agree. I think it's also subsumed into point number 8, which is one reason why a lot of faculty, myself included, came to TCU. The fact that we truly enjoy engaging in teaching students in a meaningful sort of way, but also we enjoy scholarship in what element and form it takes in our particular disciplines.
Thank you, and I meant to say...
I'm sorry.
One last thing, that's okay. In our talks at the Senate, we've also been looking at faculty ranks, and I know that the provost has some thoughts on this, but perhaps as we look into endowed positions and also possibly additional ranks, then this is a discussion that would be very germane to our ability to recruit and retain top faculty talent.
I think it's a fair observation, Jesus. Very fair.
I was talking about faculty ranks, so this has to do with endowed positions and also with the idea that was suggested by the provost some time ago that we consider additional faculty ranks. So I don't want to speak for the provost, but this is something that he shared with the Senate and that I think could be a tool for us to enhance our ability to recruit and retain top faculty talent. Thanks.
Let me make one perhaps final comment about research, and that is, again, I've been at TCU for a very long time, and we're not where we need to be, I think, as an institution. We're very research light in the Big 12, for example. Not that that should necessarily be a barometer, but we are, and it is. So let's be honest about that. But we've come a long ways, I believe, in terms of our research muscle at TCU, in terms of the caliber of faculty we attract, in terms of the support infrastructure that we have to do research. It's interesting to me that perhaps a little bit more than at times should be is focused on undergraduates at perhaps the expense of the graduate enterprise. But I do think, and again, I don't think I'm being Pollyanna here, I do think we've made steps. We need to make additional ones, but we have made steps.
Hi, Lynn Hampton, Honors College. So I have more of a suggestion and also maybe a comment for the committee. And I've also shared this with my dean, Dean Snow. So this is something that we actually struggle with a lot within Honors College. And I was thinking that perhaps maybe the committee could think about ways of identifying actual models out there in higher education that may be specifically addressing each of these points and doing it well. I know TCU has its own unique identity and its own culture, and we want to retain some of that and improve on other areas. But the problem that we often have in honors, and I feel privileged that I get to teach in small classrooms because we do get a lot of one-on-one interaction with students. They get to think about big questions. They get to formulate ideas and think about research. But the problem is there's so many other things they have to get done before they graduate that they don't really have the time and the attention to devote to developing those research projects long term. And so we struggle with that within honors because that's the idea behind honors education. We want them to start thinking about these big questions, these big ideas, thinking about graduate education, but they're trying to figure out how they're going to get everything done before they graduate. So I think there's some tension there in our culture, in our climate, but I think there's some models out there that are doing it really well, like small liberal arts colleges where students start to think about these ideas and these questions, and to address Mark's point, where they have a more direct pipeline into a graduate education, a PhD program specifically. So that's kind of my concern. If we can start to maybe contextualize how we define excellence and be more specific about what that looks like in each of these bullet points. And again, not to replicate exactly what somebody else is doing because we're unique in what we're doing, but maybe identify some models and some strengths and some best practices that we want to incorporate into our strategic plan.
I think it's very fair. Quite honestly, taking Phil's definition for number 6 in the Power Athletic Conference, I think the only way that we can come up with an idea is to do that kind of external research with programs that are currently involved in selective admissions and high-profile athletics. That should be one of the first things every one of these subcommittees do is talk about best practices. Very good observation.
Walter Betts, librarian, and I think I can speak for my peers when I say that we were very proud to be a significant part of the Academy of Tomorrow plan, and I hope that the library is considered as you, especially in this grouping, look at the academic profile of the university, because often the library, as the heart of the institution, the resources that you folks need will be continued to, be considered as a significant aspect of that plan.
Good. I would say hear, hear. Great comment.
Sam Gillum. I'm an MBA student and also graduate assistant for the athletic department. Number 6, you could tie number 6, 3, and 4 all together with this comment. One thing that I've seen, I've worked at other Power 5 institutions and non-Power 5 institutions, and I see a lot of emphasis on academics, but I feel like there also needs to be a big emphasis on success after graduation that needs to be tied in, especially with our student athletes. As a member of the athletic department, I'm not saying we don't have the resources, because we do, definitely, but I have seen traditionally more emphasis on postgraduate success with our student athletes, and you can also apply that, don't want to be discriminatory at all, you can apply that to undergraduate and graduate levels as well, success after walking across that stage. So that's just something I think we could include in all those plans and not really look at it as 2 different departments, but combine them into one and look at that as a one streamlined process. There's nothing really separate there. It's just one go throughout.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
Additional questions,
Come on,
comments?
Are you sure it's one last thing?
I have to go teach a lab in about half an hour and prepare it. I'm going to concentrate again on research. And what the outside world values is excellence in research. I hope that somewhere here you will fit the word excellence there. Imagine what would have done for our reputation if Kip Thorne was here. All the papers today would have said, Professor at TCU got the Nobel Prize for Physics. And then they will quote also our esteemed provost and our esteemed chancellor talking about how good the university is. If we're excellent in research in any field here, then we will achieve the reputation. And I hope that you will put somewhere there excellence. Yeah. Again, sorry about it, but
You're leaving?
I have to teach a lab.
That's important. Hey, Blaze?
These aren't questions, really, just if you could define a few things more clearly. Maybe I'll have questions afterwards. But if you and Phil might speak to exactly what's the focus on size what's meant by that? And secondly, define what you mean by the profile. Could you elaborate what you mean by the undergraduate or graduate profile? And that's it for now.
We'll get there. Right there is size, Blaze. That's what's been directed from the Board of Trustees over the next few years as undefined, I would say. So in raw numbers, 9,500 undergraduates, 1,500 graduates. This fall, memory serves me right, we're at about 9,100 undergraduates. So we've still got room in the ceiling to move.
Oh, focus on attaining the size.
Yeah.
Focus on size.
Yeah, yeah.
We want to be bigger but mediocre.
Well,
Now, I would also add one other thing, and that has to do with profile. There is an expectation that however you define excellence, creativity, academics, whatever, that the student body that is coming in is as good as the student body that came in the year before them. So the expectation given to the enrollment side of the equation is that while we will continue to grow, we will not reduce the quality of our students that are entering. That's difficult to do. But as we've grown from 7,200 to 9,100, that academic profile, however you define it, whether it's defined by the number of AP courses coming in, class rank, SAT scores, ACT scores, it's gotten better. It's gotten better. And so that's the other side of the equation. It's expected to stay equal to or better than. And it gets harder and harder every year.
Let me tack on about academic profile. I think one important aspect of academic profile is the diversity question. How do we continue to be a more diverse institution, including and perhaps most importantly our student body? So that gets rolled into that. And I would just generalize this to say is we've laid out these as discrete committees and discrete charges within each committee, but there's a lot of crossover where there are certain common themes that will emerge over and over again, diversity being one of them. Diversity has important conversation points in each one of these 4 committees and in essentially all of the subcommittees. And so there are common themes, and one would say, well, it doesn't seem like diversity is a separate point. But to me, diversity as a for example is something that really is almost universal in the thinking.
I would say there's one other thing that is not on any of these slides that I just realized, and that is the calendar of activities. This process began about 3 weeks ago. The report is due out at the end of February. All these subcommittee reports are due back in about the 1st of February to be collated into that late February report. And so within that larger report, there should be that kind of interaction throughout.
Mine's kind of changing gears a little bit. I hope that's okay. I'm Ashley Franklin. I teach in nursing, and I'm kind of on the younger end. I've been back at TCU for 3 years as an assistant professor, and I've had this hunch the last year or so, wondering if we might benefit from a time study, or maybe just a small version of a time study to give kind of data to support, because I know you started our talk with about data. Perhaps the teacher scholar model, and think about if our if we can tie our research productivity to our time study. And as an application example, so I teach primarily in lab classes, and the way my workload is calculated is a little bit different. It's not 1 hour for 1 hour that I spend with my students in lab. And so I just have a hunch that maybe we could relate that to research productivity. And so maybe it's a system thing with the way we're calculating that workload that could perhaps improve our academic profile overall.
I think it's a legitimate thing.
Ashley, could you elaborate a little bit what you mean by a time study? Are you talking about sort of a retrospective to look at practices past, current, with the hope of changing for the better in the future, or?
So my example is really nursey, and you'll have to forgive me for that. I had to do a time study for Medicare 7 or 8 years ago and literally log my time in the week and record what I was doing for a certain number of hours. So I just wonder if I'm spending X number of hours in lab and X number of hours giving student feedback in a narrative form, can we tie that to the papers that I need to be publishing? But it's that I'm spending that many hours in lab, and so my hours in the day are limited. Does that help you understand? Okay.
Yeah. So the question in part is, how are we as students, faculty, administrators spending our time, and how perhaps could some of that be repositioned to make us more effective? And you did that despite your poor microbiology instructor.
Yeah.
Now that I heard you define it, I do have a question and/or a suggestion. Profile seems to me to be the nature of the incoming class, the demographic, many other things about them. That's what I'm hearing from you. Am I hearing correctly?
Well, yes and no. That's part of the definition, and I'm sure you're going to get into what the other part of the definition is. But no, the outbound also becomes a part of what
Understood.
that profile is. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is, and maybe I'm suggesting a word be added, and that word would be programs. Undergraduate profile, programs, and reputation. Because what I'm hearing is the front end, and I'm hearing the face we project to the outside world. But we need to get into the nitty-gritty of what they do while they're here, what the degree. So profile is not really that, or is it? I heard profile more about kind of the demographic of the classes we bring in.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about what are we sending out?
I'm talking about what are we doing while we're here.
Yeah.
Here, Ann.
Hi.
Again, just
Ann, who are you, Ann?
I'm Ann Humrick, and I'm on number 3. And again, just speaking for those of us who met yesterday, certainly we were not limiting profile only to sort of that statistical data. We were thinking holistically that includes that experience they spend on campus. We've also raised that question about what employers are looking for, how well positioned our students are. So I think, I don't want to, again, speak on behalf of all of us because we weren't all able to be there, but I think we're thinking holistically as we approach that question.
And I would add that's also going to be a substantive component of goal number 4, which is improve the workforce. Because the workforce really talks about not only us as faculty and staff, but also as students who hit the labor force.
And that's why I think a lot of people do define profile sort of the way we first defined it. And maybe the word needs to be added. I'll write a note, but I'm glad to hear they're thinking that way too.
Thanks, Blaze. Over here. Your turn.
Thank you very much. So I'm Deborah Berry. I'm a new student here. I came in August. So I feel very privileged that I can stand here and talk to you. TCU is a great university, and I have been to many universities in Europe. I've been to London, to Paris, and I did my master's in Germany. And I haven't seen a university with such a specific mission, which says educating leaders, ethical leaders, for the world and for the global society. And we have been talking about research, that we should strengthen the research profile of the university. And it is true, we have to do this because it is very important. But at the same time, I would say that it shouldn't take the focus away from the focus on educating leaders, because this is exactly what makes the university a very unique university. And if we forget about this, or if we lose this direction, then this university will be the same university as every other university in the world. So that's what I would like to say. I'm a chemistry PhD student, yes.
Very well stated.
Thank you very much.
This is a question really. So as we engage
Jesus, can you
yes, as we engage in dreaming of what TCU could become, are you planning to also spend time looking at the structure of how we deliver and how we process? For example, last year the Senate recommended that we examine whether an associate provost position focused on undergraduates and interdisciplinary would make us more efficient. And so this is the type of discussions that maybe could directly impact and enhance our ability to deliver on our profile and reputation. So I was wondering if you're planning to have this type of discussion on the structure of the entire academic
Fair enough.
course. Thanks.
Stephen Quinn, Department of Economics, and I suppose my question concern is from the perspective of having been a department chair for some time. At that level, it doesn't seem up to this point there's been much strategic thinking about how various initiatives and stuff roll down on people who actually have to carry this stuff out. So when you hire instructors and professors of professional practice, you bring in endowed chairs, you talk about undergraduate education, you talk about teacher-scholar scholarship, all this stuff actually occurs on the ground, and it all interacts with each other within the department. And I just encourage the people working on this to think in terms of how are all these things actually going to come together. If you increase the scholarship, and we would love it, our teaching load's going to go down, and how are we going to cover that? And if we hire more people who don't do scholarship, are we just trading off some people who are scholars for some people who aren't? These problems have, my point being, these problems have not been well thought out up until now, at least on the ground, and I think we should put some serious attention into it. Thank you.
Is he speaking to the choir?
I think that's a spot-on comment, Steve. Thank you. We need reminders. That needs to be reminded to us, so I appreciate that.
So are we worn out and coming to the end? Is that what I'm sensing here? Oh, really? Okay. I would remind you that this does not end here. Any observations you have through the strategicplan.tcu.edu? Anything specifically you want to talk to Diane, myself, Phil, any of the eight subcommittee heads, please do so. The goal is to take what we have done, bring it up to date, and move forward into the future. We've done a pretty good job of moving forward into the future for quite a few years. The future is before us. So,
thank you all.
I would be remiss in not thanking Lauren and Whitney, who have done the majority of the work here. Lauren is the one who provided you lunch, which none of us expect. Oh, you didn't provide us lunch, you just showed up. Okay. But I would also offer Noel, Brian, or Kathy, who was here, is there anything that you would like to say at cabinet level and as our liaisons?
Noel's shaking his head and it's going like this. I think that means yes in Scotland.
Brian?
Brian.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And we certainly appreciate it.
So thank you all again. Please continue to offer comments. If you're rolling around sleepless some night and a great idea pops in your head, please communicate that idea so we can fold it into the strategic planning.
But it's got to pop into your head before February 1st because we're under a timeline. Thank you.